Hey y'all, today I am cooking a little Indian, globally inspired meal. I'm going to make some Vindaloo and I'm going to make some Chana Masala. I decided for my Vindaloo, rather than adding any sugar to the sauce, I want to keep the sauce nice and tangy, but I'm going to add some sweet potatoes just to have a little bit of a sweetness to offset the spice and the heat. But I wanted to marinate the sweet potatoes with the chicken in the Vindaloo sauce so they absorb a lot of flavor, but I also didn't want them to totally lose their shape, so I pre-cooked them just a little bit, actually in the microwave, just for about 2 minutes, just to basically warm them, and now I am sauteing them in a mixture of canola oil and mustard seed oil to add another layer of flavor. And I'm kind of intentionally just cooking, I can show you here. I'm trying to sear a side or two, but leave a few sides not fully seared so that hopefully the flavor of the sauce can still really get in and absorb through some of the sides, and then the other sides will provide a nice variation of texture in the final dish. So over here I am making my own tomato paste. I didn't have any. I wanted to make sure I got a really nice rich tomato flavor into my final Vindaloo. So these are some organic diced canned tomatoes with no salt or anything added. I pureed them in my mini food processor, which is my favorite kitchen tool. And I'm having an issue with the breaker for my oven and my stove tripping all the time. I can basically use maybe one burner at a time if I'm lucky. So rather than trying to roast my tomato paste in the oven or even try to ensure that I can keep a stovetop burner on long enough to reduce it that way, I am doing it in a slow cooker with the lid off. I just got it started, so it still pretty much looks like tomato puree at this point, which is what it is. We'll check back in a little bit and see how it's developing. Using all of the devices today, given my oven and stove situation, although this is probably actually the right tool for the job anyway. So I am pressure cooking my dried garbanzo beans. Great timing, it just finished up. So those will be used for my Chana Masala today, and then I'm also going to make some homemade hummus to eat with veggies for, through the weekend and the beginning of next week for some snacks and lunches. So stay tuned. Here I'm using my mini cast iron to lightly toast whole coriander and cumin, some broken up cinnamon sticks, turmeric powder, paprika powder. There's some mustard seeds in here. So I'm going to toast these all. I'm using whole spices where I have them, but I went ahead and threw the already pre-ground spices that I have in here too, just to kind of dry roast for a minute, just until it gets fragrant to release some of the flavors. And then I'm going to grind all of this together and add it to, this is my fresh garlic, my fresh ginger, my fresh and dried chilies. I ground all of those up using this handy dandy little garlic twister tool. I highly recommend it. It's great, especially for garlic and ginger and chilies, and I used it on my dry chilies too, so multi-purpose. So I'm going to hop off here so I don't overcook my spices, and I'll check back in a little bit. Here's my chicken and sweet potatoes all ready to sit in this marinade for the rest of the afternoon until I take it out of the refrigerator to fry it up for dinner. I like to use chicken thighs, especially for a meal like this. I had some frozen chicken thighs. I like to use just a pair of kitchen shears. I put on some nitrile gloves, and I find it's a really quick, no mess, kind of sanitary way to chop up my chicken thighs into the desired size pieces. I toss the chicken thighs and the pre-fried sweet potatoes into that delicious Vindaloo sauce that I made, and I'm going to let it marinate for at least several hours before I cook it up. I absolutely love the flavors of Indian food, but I don't love that they often don't have a lot of vegetables, in the curry dishes and whatever. So here I have my onions and all of my dried and whole and ground and fresh spices for my Chana Masala. I'm really excited. I finally have kasuri methi. I've been trying to get some for a while. It took me a little longer to get my hands on. To my chicken vindaloo, I'm going to add these sliced mini sweet peppers. Those are sweet Vidalia onions on the bottom, so I'm going to kind of quickly flash fry those, and then cook the chicken in sweet potatoes in that delicious vindaloo sauce, and then add the peppers and onions back in at the end. I've got onions and tomatoes to toss into both the chana masala and the vindaloo. I'm also probably going to add a bag of frozen spinach into the chana masala. I was back and forth on whether or not I was going to just cook the spinach separate and add a layer of spinach and then a layer of rice and then the food on top, or whether I'm going to put it in the chana masala. Right now I'm thinking I'm going to put it in the chana masala, but that could change. I love how beautiful all the spices are all laid out. Here I have whole cumin, I have cinnamon sticks, I have whole green cardamom, whole cloves, bay leaves, there's some whole black peppers in there. Really tasty stuff. This is turmeric, paprika, garam masala, I think some more cumin. That might be all. The kasuri methi, fresh cilantro, garlic and ginger, and that is jalapeno. I don't have any other hot chilies right now that are fresh. So, okay, after several hours of simmering in the slow cooker with the lid off, I would say this is officially tomato paste. So I will be using this in both my chana masala and my chicken vindaloo for dinner this evening, and then freezing the remainder in little blocks to use as I have the need. So here I am toasting my whole cumin seeds in a hot pot. I will toast them, and then I'm going to add some ghee, and then I'm going to add my rinsed basmati rice from my lovely 25-pound bag of basmati rice. Kind of saute that in the ghee, and then add my water and cook as normal. Hi again, y'all. So I'm one of those chefs that, like, my 4 stovetop burners and 1 oven are very frequently insufficient. I really need, you know, one of those nice, like, 8 burner gas ranges with a griddle with dual ovens or triple ovens, but I make do with what I have for the most part. So right now, having the fuse in my stove oven combo being on the fritz and only being able to use 1 burner at a time if I don't want to trip the breaker is really challenging. So my basmati rice with my cumin and my ghee are cooking on the stove right now. So I am going to, I'm not a big Instapot person, but I am using it a lot today. So I'm going to use my Instapot to get my chana masala going. And by the way, my pronunciation on all of these things is probably terrible. I mean, I'm fairly knowledgeable when it comes to ingredients and food and cultures. But, you know, when it comes down to it, I was a little girl in completely whitewashed West Virginia. I didn't have a television until I was 23 years old. Most things, if I was even exposed to them, I read about them in books for many years before I ever heard anyone say the words. So just general words, and certainly, you know, names of foods and ingredients and stuff from other cultures. I try when I can to look them up and to remember the correct pronunciation, but don't ever, you know, assume that I know just because I know a lot about food. So anyways, I have my Instapot on saute. I have some avocado oil in there, so I'm going to add my whole spices, which I showed you all earlier. So this was bay leaves, cardamom, whole peppers, cumin seeds, cinnamon stick, some cloves, all that good stuff. So I'll give that a little stir. And I'm going to add my onion, which I chopped up earlier. It's so nice to have everything prepped already. So here's my onion. This is like 1.5 medium-sized yellow onions. Yeah, let's keep going okay. Seems like this is going to work instead of using the stove. So we'll get some more of these ingredients in here and check back with you in a little bit. All right, here I have all of my fresh and dried and whole and ground spices and my onions and my chickpeas or garbanzo beans, which I cooked in the pressure cooker. I've also added some frozen spinach. I may need to, you know how spinach is, even frozen spinach, it kind of shrinks down. So as it thaws a little bit, I may add a little bit more. But basically, I'm going to let all of this cook for 20 or 30 minutes so it can absorb all of the delicious flavors, taste it, see what else I need to add. And then I will be adding my fresh cilantro and my kasuri methi. There we go again with an ingredient I may or may not be pronouncing correctly. And hopefully it's all going to be super delicious. So my basmati rice is done. So I've slid it off the burner, and now I have my 12-inch cast iron. And I'm sauteing my peppers, or sweet peppers and onions. These are going to just get very lightly sauteed and then set to the side while I make the rest of my vindaloo in this pan, and then I'll throw the peppers and onions back in at the end. As I mentioned earlier, this is really a traditional part of the dish. I always say globally inspired because I don't claim to be traditional or authentic with anything. I just like using flavors from cuisines around the world and then kind of putting my own spin, and usually an extra dose of veggies on it. So these are probably only going to be in here another minute or two before I set them aside and cook the rest of the vindaloo. So I've tasted and adjusted my Chana Masala, or Chana Masala, excuse me, plus spinach. What is that? Saag Chana Masala. I had to add a bunch more garam masala and cardamom and ginger and salt and paprika. I think it's tasting pretty good now. So it is now just on a keep warm function. Right now I am sauteing. So these are my small diced yellow onions, which are in addition to the sweet onions that are going to be added back in at the end. My peppers and onions look beautiful over here. So I've got my handy dandy nitrile glove back on, and I am going to add my chunks of marinated chicken and sweet potato into my cast iron here. Hopefully it doesn't get too crowded in here. Smells delicious. I love that sizzle sound. And then we'll dump the rest of the sauce on top. We don't want to miss any of that goodness, all those delicious spices and vinegar from earlier. So now we're going to cook this up for a few minutes before we add the rest of the ingredients. It smells so good. It's got that signature Vindaloo tang. So here I've got, I've kind of sauteed my chicken, seared the outside a little bit, my sweet potatoes all in that Vindaloo sauce. Camera's getting steamy, so it's time to add my homemade tomato paste. We'll throw a good lump of that in there. And I'm also going to add some chopped Campari tomatoes that I had fresh but needed to use. I'm going to mix this in. I'm going to add some water to get enough of a nice broth in here and let this simmer for a while until my chicken is fully cooked. Obviously taste and adjust the flavor to get it where it needs to be. Hopefully as these tomatoes cook in, we'll get some of that signature kind of red color of the Vindaloo. Talk to you soon! So most of the time when I cook, I don't follow recipes. I just kind of create whatever. I let each ingredient kind of inform the next ingredient based on my understanding of flavors. But sometimes when I'm trying to recreate a dish that I especially like, especially from international cuisine that maybe I'm not as familiar with all the spices, although everything in this dish I'm pretty accustomed with. But anyways, so Vindaloo I hadn't made before, so as usual I read several recipes, kind of picked some bits and pieces from various ones that I thought they were a good idea, but then I generally kind of followed somewhat the steps of one recipe. And I doctored it as I went, but now that I've gotten to the final step, I have had to taste and adjust and add a lot of things to get it where I want it to be. I don't cook quite as intuitively when I'm trying to somewhat follow a recipe, so here I am at the end making some changes to try to get that flavor I'm after. One thing I love to do when I'm cooking is I'll put a scoop of whatever it is I'm making in a little shallow dish, make sure I get some of the sauce. I have a chunk of chicken, a chunk of the sweet potato, and I let it cool down, and then I taste it before I add more to my flavors. Sometimes when you sample something straight from the pot and it's too hot, it kind of deadens your taste buds and doesn't allow you to get an accurate representation of what the dish is going to taste like on your plate. So I do like to use these cute little dishes to take a little sample on the side and see what I need to add. Here is the chicken and sweet potato vindaloo, just about ready to serve. I just sprinkled some kasuri methi and some fresh cilantro on top. I'm going to slide it over in the cast iron and throw the rice back on this burner for just a minute to heat it up, and then we're going to start plating this. I'm going to serve dinner tonight with these Kerala curry chutneys. I haven't seen these in a couple of years, so I was really excited to find them at I think I got them at Harris Teeter a couple weekends ago, but I hadn't seen them in a few years. They're delicious. They're made right here in North Carolina in Graham. The tomato chutney is kind of a sweet and sour, a little bit of spice, mostly just delicious. She calls it an on-everything condiment. The coriander chutney, a spicy Indian condiment, especially because I found these delicious chutneys. I was really tempted to make naan today to go with this delicious Indian feast. However, as much as I love naan, especially with some good chutneys, we've had a lot of bread lately, and I am just not a huge bread person. I'd rather eat my rice and my Vindaloo and Chana Masala, so I decided not to make naan because, I don't know, I'd eat like half a piece of it and get full and not want to eat all of the delicious otherness. So anyways, check out, if you ever see these Kerala curries in the store, I highly recommend them, especially this tomato one is just absolutely delicious. They're gluten-free. I was trying to look on the thing. It doesn't say whether or not... okay, so yeah, so www.keralacurry.com. So you might actually be able to order them there. I haven't tried to do that. Anyways, I highly recommend them. I'm going to get this plated up and see how this meal turned out. All plated up and ready to enjoy. So this is the chicken and sweet potato vindaloo that I added those peppers and onions to. My two chutneys by Kerala curry. My chana masala that I added spinach to. These are chopped with fresh cilantro. And I don't know what it is about basmati rice and cumin, but they are just the perfect thing together. And I love basmati rice, even plain, but if I can take the extra few seconds to toast some cumin into it, it just really makes it perfect. So, time to enjoy my dinner. Thank you all for following along today.
Unless you were just live.
The news good. I was worried. The recipe kept saying how spicy it was. My partner doesn't do spicy, so I was trying to make it a little on the mild side, and it's really not nearly as spicy as a vindaloo Should be in my book, but it has lots of good complex flavors. Delicious. Let's take a bite of the garam masala or chana masala. I keep saying that with my spinach. Now that is delicious. There's a little bit of nuttiness. I charred some of the spices, so it has a little bit of that. And the cardamom, absolutely delicious. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, a wonderful weekend, and thanks for following along with Little Lala's Kitchen.